Transforming quadratic function defined by y equals ax squared plus bx plus c into the form y equals a times the quantity x minus h squared plus k. Our objective: at the end of this presentation, you should be able to transform the quadratic function defined by y equals ax squared plus bx plus c into the form y equals a times the quantity x minus h squared plus k. Here are the steps in transforming quadratic function defined by y equals ax squared plus bx plus c to the form y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. Step 1. Group x squared plus bx. Step 2. Factor out the common factor. Step 3. Add and subtract a real number that makes the next expression in the parentheses a perfect square trinomial. Step 4. Express the perfect square trinomial or the PST as the square of binomial. Take note, if the equation is not in the form y equals ax squared plus bx plus c, you need to change it first before you proceed to the given step above. Example number 1. Transform the following equation in the form y equals a times the quantity x minus h squared plus k. Given y equals x squared minus 4x minus 5. So let's proceed on the first step by grouping the quadratic term and the linear term. So we have y equals quantity x squared minus 4x minus 5. The next step is to factor out the common factor on the quadratic term and the linear term. But since the numerical coefficient of your quadratic term is 1, therefore no need to factor it out. Now let's proceed on making the terms inside the parentheses a perfect square trinomial. So we have y equals x squared minus 4x plus blank minus 5. So to find for the missing term and to make these terms a perfect square trinomial, so let's have the formula c equals b over 2 squared. In this case, your b is negative 4. So we have c equals negative 4 divided by 2 squared. So we have c equals negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2 and then squared. C is equal to positive 4. So the constant term now is positive 4. Therefore, the given now, x squared minus 4x plus 4, is a perfect square trinomial. Now remember that there will be an invisible 1 outside the parenthesis. So next step is to multiply the number outside the parentheses to the constant term 4 and add this, the inverse, to the other side of this equation. So we have y equals x squared minus 4x multiplying positive 4 by positive 1 is equal to positive 4, and the inverse of positive 4 is negative 4. So we have negative 5 plus negative 4. So we have y equals x squared minus 4x plus 4. Negative 5 plus negative 4 is negative 9. Now, this given perfect square trinomial should be changed into a perfect square binomial. So, to make this a perfect square binomial, so we have y equals, get the square root of x squared. The square root of x squared is x. Follow the sign of the middle term, which is negative, and get the square root of the last term, which is 4, which is 2. And then squared it, then copy negative 9. Therefore, final answer is y equals x minus 2 squared minus 9. Let's check. So as you notice, we group first the x squared and bx. And then add and subtract a real number that makes the next expression in the parentheses a perfect square trinomial. And then we have the final answer, which is y equals quantity x plus 2 squared minus 9. Sample number 2. Y equals 3x squared minus 12x plus 5. So let's group the quadratic term and the linear term. So we have y equals 3x squared minus 12x plus 5. Next is to get the common factor. So the common factor is 3. So remember, the common factor will be the numerical coefficient of your quadratic term. So we have y equals, so just put outside the parentheses the common factor, which is 3, times, then 3x squared, divide by 3, so 3 will be cancelled out. What left is x squared. So you have negative, so we have minus 12x divided by 3. So 12 divided by 3, we have 4, and copy the variable x plus 5. The next step is to make the terms inside the parentheses a perfect square trinomial. So to get that, we have c equals negative 4 over 2 squared. So we have negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2 squared. Negative 2 times negative 2, we have positive 4. So we have y equals 3 times x squared minus 4x plus 4 plus 5. Then let's proceed to the next step, which is by multiplying the number outside the parentheses and the constant term that we have. So we have 3 times positive 4, we have positive 12, and add the inverse of positive 12 to this side of the equation. So we have y equals 3 times x squared minus 4x plus 4 plus 5. Since in this case this is positive 12, the inverse of that will become plus negative 12. Adding two unlike numbers, so we will be subtracting them. So we have y equals 3 times x squared minus 4x plus 4. So 12 minus 5 is 7. And since 12 is greater than 5 and the sign of 12 is negative, so we have negative 7. So the next step is to make this perfect square trinomial a square of binomial. So we have y equals 3 times square root of x squared is x, and the middle term is negative 4x, so we have negative. Then the square root of 4 is 2, so we have 2, and then squared it minus 7. Therefore, the final answer is y equals 3 times the quantity x minus 2 squared minus 7. So let's check. So we have the groupings of the quadratic term and the linear term, then factoring out the common factor, and then adding and subtract the real number that makes the expression in the parentheses a perfect square trinomial, and then expressing the perfect square trinomial as the square of binomial. Example number 3. 3x squared plus y equals negative 6x minus 6. As you notice, the given equation is not in the form y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. So therefore, we need to transform this equation before we proceed to the next step. So by transforming this, we need to move positive 3x squared to the other side of the equation. Therefore, we have y equals negative 3x squared minus 6x minus 6. Now we can now proceed to the next step by grouping the quadratic term and the linear term. So we have y equals negative 3x squared minus 6x minus 6. The next step is to factor out the common factor on the given quadratic term and linear term. So the common will be negative 3. So you have y equals negative 3 times dividing negative 3x squared by negative 3 will give us a quotient of x squared. Dividing negative 6x by negative 3 will give us a quotient of positive 2x and minus 6. Then to make this a perfect square trinomial, let's find for the c. So we have c equals positive 2 divided by 2 squared. So we have 1 squared. 1 squared is equal to 1. Therefore, we have now y equals negative 3 x squared plus 2x plus 1 minus 6. The next step is to multiply the number outside the parentheses by our constant term, which is 1. And then add the inverse of that besides negative 6. So multiplying negative 3 by positive 1 will give us a product of negative 3. And add the inverse of that, which is positive 3. So we have y equals negative 3 times the quantity x squared plus 2x plus 1 minus 6 plus 3. So adding to unlike sign integer, we will be subtracting these two numbers and follow the sign of the bigger number. So we have negative 3 so x squared plus 2x plus 1. So 6 minus 3 will give us a difference of 3. And since 6 is greater than 3 and the sign of 6 is negative, therefore this is negative 3. And then let's make this perfect square trinomial a square of binomial. So we have y equals negative 3. The square root of x squared is x. And since the middle term is positive, so this is positive also, the operation. And get the square root of 1, which is 1. And then squared, then minus 3. So the final answer now is y equals negative 3 times the quantity x plus 1 squared minus 3. So let's check. So we have transforming first, okay, in the form y equals x squared plus bx plus c. And then we group and then factor out the common factor and add or subtract the real number that makes the next expression in the parentheses of perfect square trinomial, and then expressing your perfect square trinomial as the square of binomial. Transform the equation in the form y equals x squared plus bx plus c, given y equals 3 times x plus 2 squared minus 7. So the first thing you should do is to solve for the numbers inside the parentheses. To solve x plus 2 squared, just simply expand. So we have x plus 2 times x plus 2. Then use the FOIL method or the parrot-big method. So using that, we have y equals 3 times. So we have x times x, we have x squared. 2 times x, we have positive 2x. Then another 2x. And the last term, 2 times 2, we have 4 minus 7. Then combine similar terms. So similar is 2x and 2x. So we have y equals 3 times x squared plus 4x plus 4 minus 7. The next step is to multiply one by one 3 on the numbers and terms inside the parentheses. So we have y equals 3 times x squared, we have 3x squared. 3 times positive 4x, that is positive 12x. And 3 times positive 4 is positive 12. Then copy negative 7. And then combine again similar terms which are 12 and negative 7. So we have y equals 3x squared plus 12x. 12 minus 7 is equal to negative 5. So the final answer is y equals 3x squared plus 12x minus 5. Thank you! Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button so that you are updated on my new videos.